Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hey, what up? I'm happy to have you. And today we're going to talk about INTJ childhood. This video may be helpful if you have an INTJ child, or if you were an INTJ child who still hasn't fully processed their adolescence and their younger years. This video is going to more specifically relate to kind of 12 and younger ages, what I went through, and I put together a set of questions that I'm going to ask myself. I'm hoping these questions stimulate some of my own memory, which, to be quite honest, is terrible. I really remember very little of my childhood, and I'm hoping that I'm able to verbalize and articulate some important components of it through the questions I have written for this piece. All right, so first question I wrote here is, how do you remember spending most of your time? And so, time is a big component of what makes up, our known age in this, what we consider to be age and time space continuum, right? So because of that, I thought it was important. And so when I was a child, 12 and younger, the majority of my time I remember spending is by myself. I don't really remember a lot of elements of school or things that happened in school, or very, very few memories of actually being in school, though I knew I was always there and attended. I remember just these snapshots of being in certain places. I remember being in my house growing up because I had a box that it was from a lawnmower that my dad had gotten, and I would go and hang out in this box and just be in my imagination land for hours of the day, just by myself. Completely content. I was a very content child. I would say that's probably one of the best ways to describe me, is I was very just content in life. I didn't need really a lot of things, a lot of toys, a lot of anything at all to be content. So I was very content in my box. I spent a lot of time in that box hanging out. The other place was up in a tree, which actually I discovered later in life was actually a giant bush. So I would hang out for hours a day, especially I'm sure during the summers, in a giant bush that existed in my backyard, and I'd climb up to the top and I would kind of like simulate these conversations like with myself, and like I wasn't actually speaking out loud, but I was imagining these conversations that were happening within other members within the tree. And I would just like be very content being up there and like thinking in the tree, and then like imagining things in the tree, and like imagining scenarios really like play out like visually within my mind while I was up there in the tree. And I wasn't actually doing anything. I was just sitting. How did you make friendships, and what were your friendships like? So this took me a while to really process as I was older, and I did not really make friends very well. I had maybe one or two friends that would span multiple years of my life growing up, and then I would kind of have like another like one or like friend like that kind of like would take time. But I really only had one friend at a time that I was close with, and maybe some, of my parents, like friends who had kids, they would come over. But I really only had one, at max two friends at a time at any span within my life. And in general, I just didn't make friends easily with other kids. Like other kids didn't really understand how to play with me or how I liked to play. And at a very young age, I understood that. So when I was very, very young, I remember realizing that other kids don't communicate the way that I do. Like they don't see things the way that I do necessarily. That was very confusing to me, I think, as a child, because I just didn't know how to human with them. And I was like, I could see them having fun and playing and doing these things together. And I was like, I kind of want that. Like, I want to have friends with like people that, do things. But it's like, I didn't understand how other kids played. Like, I didn't understand how they like loved certain things and why they wanted to do certain things. And like, my brain was just on a completely different track. And so I think that's a big reason of why I didn't really have a lot of friends, is because I didn't really know how to get along with other kids. At the same time, I realized that like the work of getting other people to kind of like understand me or getting to play with them, like it was so much work that to me it really wasn't worth it. So I just had very limited people that I played with. And in terms of what those friendships were like, I honestly really don't remember a lot of what they were like. I was very content being alone and spending lots of time alone. All right, so my next two questions are, what made you feel happy and what made you feel sad? And after writing these, I realized I can't really answer these very well, because the thing is like, I know I was generally a happy kid. I know generally I wasn't very sad, but the thing is like, I never really expressed emotion on either spectrum. Like, I would say in general, I was a very content child. I've always been a very emotionally even keel. That's probably the best way to describe me my entire life in terms of emotions. Very even keeled, not easily swayed by the circumstance. The variables of life, like what life would throw at me in terms of, different sensory stimulus, I was not paying attention to the sensory that much as an NI dominant child. And so therefore, the sensory of the changing things never really threw me off emotionally, and I never really emotionally reacted to things very often. So, however, there was this one time when I was 12 and I wanted a Furby and I had a meltdown in a CVS. It was not a great moment and it never happened again, but for some reason that day, I wanted that Furby. All right, so my next question is, when did you feel confident? And as a child, looking back now, and I tried to marinate on this a little bit, I really felt confident when I was in control of doing something, which is a very IJ characteristic at a young age. And so when I was in control of doing something, so that means I would have my little projects I would work on. At a very young age, I was using an old-fashioned video camera, and somehow I got this idea to start making stop motion. So I'd start and stop a camera, I'd move something, start and stop it, and because I wanted to see my scene play out of what I wanted to see. And so like, I felt very confident in those situations, being able to make that thing happen, even though I had never done it before. Like I was like 6 or 7 making these stop motion videos, and I just would do it, and that's the place I felt confident. All right, so then if I was like around other kids, especially like if they were stuck with me, they didn't have a way out, I like to control, not them, but control the environment. So like, I would kind of establish the like, this is what we're going to do, and like, these are the roles that we each have within this environment, and it's a very IJ control-y thing, to be honest, like as a kid. But the thing was, I wasn't maliciously trying to control these other kids. I just wanted to see the scene play out, or I wanted to see the enactment of whatever we were doing in a certain way. And so I was like, okay, this is your role, this is your role. These are all the pieces that need to be put together so we can pull this thing off and have a great time. And that might be another reason I didn't have as many friends. It's because like, not everyone wants to play by the NI rules. So next question is, what frustrated you? And so I would say kind of this, there's 2 components of this. So one of the things that would frustrate me as a kid is when people would try to like slow me down with tasks that didn't have any purpose. And I just kind of wanted to go off into my own world and explore. And, as a parent, I'm sure that can be kind of frustrating, because it's like you're trying to control your kid in a little area, give it something to do for a period of time, but like your kid just like wants to go to outer space, out in the backyard somewhere. Another thing that really frustrated me was inefficiency. And I remember this as a kid. I think I may have mentioned this in another video, but like, circumstances in which adults were in control and they weren't doing a good job. It was like, as a kid, I saw the adults not doing a good job in terms of like doing things the right way. And so like, one of the biggest things I remember was like the chaos of camp. And like, that was another thing. Like, I did not like chaos as a kid. The chaos of where's everyone supposed to go? Like, who am I supposed to be with? Like, there's people, there's like loud noises, like we're supposed to go on a boat. I don't want to sit with these other kids. It's like all sticky here. Like those are a lot of my frustrations with like the chaos of the world. But then also like when adults were like given the task to like, help all these kids do a certain thing, but they only had one tool to like do the thing. And it's like, you're supposed to help all these kids with this one tool. And like, I like as a kid, I just remember being like so frustrated, like, why would they not get more tools to like make this thing work better and make it flow better? You know, like obviously there's more children, you know, obviously they could have used more staff or more help. Like, why did they think that this would make sense to do in this certain way? And I remember being so frustrated with that, especially like what really brought up that frustration was those chaotic environments. And I would say that was probably my number one frustration. All right, so my next question is, what was your greatest challenge as a kid? And as a little INTJ, I would say it was being understood / understanding other humans. And I've said this before, but at a young age, I realized that I was not understood in general, like very well by like other outside people. And I realized that in order to survive in the world and get by and like succeed and do things like with other humans, I had to play human better. I had to like watch how other people were doing these things and like act in that way in order to get by in life. Like just like being me, obviously I saw like the result, like it wasn't working, you know, it wasn't optimal for like how I needed to get by in life. So at such a young age, I was looking and pinging and learning to modify my behavior so that I could like generate certain results in my life. And it was still such a challenge because it was like I had to learn how to SF better, which is like, you know, do things that like are liked in reality. And I was just not good at that. Like I didn't understand other things that like kids liked and like did the same way that they did. So I was always trying to kind of mimic their behavior, but it was just always awkward and like not very good. I felt like I was always speaking a language and, you know, acting in a culture that wasn't really mine. And so that, I would say that was a big challenge, but I was very accepting of it. And I was just like, this is how it is. This is how I have to behave in order to get X, Y, and Z results in life. And that's how it works. It wasn't until typology when I found the others and realized that, oh my gosh, my global family does exist. There's other people on this planet who do understand how my brain works, and I'm not actually alone on this planet. The tribe exists. You guys are here. So grateful for you. All right, so I have 2 more questions to go. This one is, what did you find most troubling? I didn't understand a lot of times where other kids were mean or like why they didn't like accept me in certain capacities. And I wanted to understand, right? So NI, it wants to understand how all of the components and workings work together. And as a little kid, it's like I couldn't understand why other kids were being mean. And so it's like I wasn't even mad that they were mean. I just didn't understand. And like I remember so badly just wanting to understand like why, was it something that I did? Like, is there something wrong? Like, I don't understand like why, you know? And so I think that was more like troubling in the sense of the word troubling, because I just could not always understand. And then as I grew, I start to, you know, get some of the missing information and be like, oh, you know what, it was probably this or probably that. Or I do have this faint memory of being small and just going up to random kids and being like, what are you doing? And it was very basic things. Like it could be like playing catch and like, I just like didn't understand like why they were playing catch or like, why they were doing something a certain way. And I wanted to understand the thing versus like wanting to necessarily do the thing. But it's like, I think I did want to do the thing, but I wanted to understand it first. And so it was this backwards approach to trying to play with other kids or trying to interact with like people like at school or whatever that like didn't really serve me very well. So I think that's interesting. I always want to know like why, like what are you doing? Why are you doing that? You know? And it's like little kids don't want to be questioned in that way. They just want to play with the ball or like play with like the toy, you know? And I just want to know why. Why are you playing with that toy? And my last question here is, when did you feel most at peace? And I would say that as a child, I felt most at peace when I was in an environment that was void of chaos. And so I can remember growing up, my grandparents had a boat And we would go in the summers. I would go with my mom, and sometimes my dad would come over and my grandparents. We would go over, we'd take her at this boat over to the beach, had a little cabin on it. We could sleep inside, and we would sleep on the boat for like a few weeks out of the summer. And it was just very quiet. The days were very simple. I could go and catch frogs outside and go in the water. And it was just like very, very simple in terms of the environment, what was going on. It was quiet, it was peaceful. There was like a few other kids who I knew there, but it's like I wasn't really concerned with like having friends or doing things with other people. I could just kind of be at peace in this like tranquil place and go on my brain adventures. So that's where I was most at peace. All right, guys, so that's it for this video. If you guys have a young INTJ in your life, or one you assume might be a young INTJ who's a child, let them know that, you know, you understand aspects of their brain and that it's okay to ask questions, and it's okay for them not to always understand everything. And for them just to know that life is a process. We're all, you know, faking it until we make it. And that their way of thinking and their approach to thinking and understanding, it's not wrong because it's different than maybe other kids that they're around. And I think that would be beneficial. Have a great day. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. I'll see you in my next video. Bye.